Hello, Internet world and friends at large. This is Chris O'Kelly's SoundCloud channel, and today I would like to talk a little bit about love and my feelings about love, and some things that have come up in conversations between me and some of my friends recently, and some ideas that I've been mulling over for quite a while. I guess I always was, I've always carried around this feeling about love, this eternal feeling about love, this very expansive feeling about love, even when I was a child, about love being more than just an amorous connection, love being something that is more eternal, that connects all of us humans and all of us that are a part of creation, which is everything, nature, animals, the sky, etc. So, most people think of love as an emotion or like an impulse that exists between people, an emotion or a impulse, a feeling that creates amorous feelings of you wanting to be connected physically to another person, and feelings of wanting to basically be with another person and having your needs fulfilled by another person. I think a lot of people associate love with that idea of our needs being fulfilled by the person that we love, or expectations that the person that we love is going to fulfill our needs or is going to do certain things for us. And I think that's beautiful when another human being elects to help us fulfill needs that we might have. But for me, love is much deeper than that, and love is not dependent on anybody fulfilling our needs. Love is more of a recognition of the love in another person, or what you might call the light in another person, or the good in another person, or the light or the good in an animal, or the light and the good in a tree, anything in nature, or the light and the goodness that resides in the stars or in the moon. It's more, love is more of a recognition of the good that exists in all things, rather than an expectation that any one thing or anyone fulfills needs for us. And nature teaches us about love on all levels due to the ecstatic response that we have toward natural beauty. The feelings that come from watching a sunset, watching a sunrise, seeing the night sky, looking at the mountains, looking closely at flowers and mushrooms and dirt, bugs looked on a closer level. We could see the beauty in them. The natural world brings an unrestrained love from our hearts in a way that is not related to attachment or this need to have our expectations filled by another. We don't really seek to possess a sunset, for example. It's impossible. We can't possess it. It's an ephemeral situation that is there for us to behold, and it fills us with joy, but we don't seek to capture it, much like we don't seek to capture the mountains. We can't take the whole mountain with us and expect the mountain to, cook us dinner and sleep with us and fulfill our needs, but we still have love for the beauty that mountain represents. We know that nature is ephemeral and will not be exactly the same all the time. It's constantly changing. But we do give our hearts fully to appreciating and experiencing natural beauty in the moment. We don't let the fact that the sunrise is never going to be the same again deter us from enjoying each and every sunset that we see. And that way, nature teaches us to love without attachment. It teaches us to love without the ego. And the ego can be thought of as all of those things within us that seek to attach and seek to control things on the outside world, things that are outside of us. The ego seeks to control those things so we can have a consistent association with whatever it is that we're seeking to connect with. But nature is always changing and always moving, and animals, the birds, are never quite within our grasp. And if they are for a moment, then it's only for a moment. But that doesn't deter us from experiencing their beauty. So, I want to talk a little bit about that feeling that nature gives us and imparts to us when we experience it. It's a feeling in our hearts. It's a feeling that radiates from our hearts. When we are inspired, we can feel the energy gathering in our heart centers and spreading throughout the rest of our body. And it's a feeling of joy. It's a feeling of peace. And that feeling is love. Now, if we take that feeling and transfer it to our human relationships, yes, people give us that feeling as well with acts of kindness. When we are interacting with certain people, we feel those those feelings in our heart, much like we do when we're experiencing beauty in nature. And that's a beautiful thing. A lot of times, though, for us, those feelings that come from humans are all too easily associated with attachment and control. So once we receive those feelings from humans, whether they be on a physical or an emotional level from other humans, we immediately, in our ego mind, seek to control that person so we can have a consistent feeling of joy. And that's where the line kind of gets crossed, because at that point we're not allowing that person to be natural, much like nature. We're not experiencing that person for what they are. We're not allowing that person to be ephemeral. We're not allowing that person to change. We're grabbing a hold of that person at the point that they gave us that feeling and wanting to keep them there so we keep receiving that feeling, instead of opening ourselves up fully to the experience of that human and allowing their nature, their true nature to be experienced. And at that point we can experience that feeling of love in a variety of different ways, much like we do in nature, if we allow that natural expression of that other human to interact with our lives rather than us seeking to control what they're doing. And this idea of seeking to control the other person can be very subliminal. Like I think it's something that I've been guilty of. It's something that anyone on this planet has been guilty of, and not necessarily because you wanted to control that person per se. It can be subconscious. It can be a very subconscious feeling, but if you find yourself struggling to relate to another human, it's time to start thinking about what you are doing and whether you're trying to control that person's response so that you get a particular response that you had felt in the past, or that you remember, or that you would like to receive and feel again. And at that point, it's time to think about how you are relating to that person and how you're relating to yourself. And if you are allowing that person to be who they are and allowing yourself to experience that person for who they are and not for what you want them to be. And a lot of times this ego attachment leads to anger in relationships. It causes the feeling of love to become a feeling of disappointment, or we allow the ego to turn that feeling of love into a feeling of disappointment when that person is not doing exactly what we want them to do, and is not fulfilling us in the way that they initially did on their own accord. We tend to get angry. We tend to try to control that person even more once that happens, and these feelings lead to anger. And once those anger feelings grow, then we start creating schisms in the relationship, and people start breaking up. And then the heart center closes down because we've decided that since we couldn't control that response that we didn't have control over in the first place, we decide that if we can't control it, then we have to shut our hearts down to that person because we did not receive the expectation that we desired. And at that point, when the heart center shuts down, that relationship becomes shut down. And that's usually the point that we get to as humans, is that relationship shuts down, and then we blame the person for not fulfilling our needs. We blame ourselves for falling in love with that person or opening our hearts to that person. We get angry because we say that person didn't meet our expectations, and that was such a drag, that was such a loss. When in reality, that human being was just being themselves, and we were seeking to control how that human acted towards us. And we wonder why the relationship was so great in the beginning and why it got so bad in the end. And it's because in the beginning we were open to the experience of that human. We were open to everything that they had to offer. We were open with our hearts. And the only difference is, as the relationship progressed, the heart center began to shut down. And that shutting down of the heart center is a purely egotistical response, an ego mind response to the ego not receiving what it thinks it needs or what it expects from another person. When in reality we can forego the ego response and trust that love is abundant and that love is eternal, and if we have a feeling of love for a person or for an object or for nature, that feeling of love isn't telling us that we need to receive a particular thing from that individual or that object or that thing in nature. What love is teaching us is, what that feeling of love is teaching us is that having an open heart and allowing nature, humans, whatever it may be, to express themselves to you in a natural way with your heart open is a beautiful feeling. That feeling is showing us that when we have an open heart, that anything can bring us joy, because we are allowing all of these creators in our lives to create without our control. And that giving up of our control is a beautiful thing, because then we allow the light in others, we allow the light in nature, we allow the light in animals to touch us in its most pure form. And that can be confusing for a lot of us, because it's hard for us to understand how to experience without control. It's hard for the ego to understand how to experience without control. But the control is the illusion, and the feeling of love is the reality. And isn't it interesting that as soon as we start trying to control, our feeling of love diminishes. And it's interesting that we forget that our feeling of love is diminishing as the feeling of control becomes more prominent. We tend to think that we need more control, and then we just get angry and our heart shuts down more and more. When in reality, what we were being asked to do was keep an open heart and remember that feeling of love, and remember how we received that feeling with an open heart, and to maintain an open heart no matter what the circumstances are, no matter what each individual human being is doing, or what each individual animal or whatever it may be is doing. We are being asked to maintain our open heart and forego that feeling of control. And with that open heart, no matter what happens in a relationship, you will always love that person, and you will always be open to that person, no matter how much the illusion of them hurting you was, no matter how intense the illusion of them hurting you was. It was your own desire to control that was hurting you, and your own decision to shut down your heart center that was hurting you, and that is hurting you. When in reality, if you have an open heart and you maintain an open heart, you will always be open to the love that that person or that thing has to give to you. You will not be shut down. And who's to say that if you go through a major breakup and things get ugly, if you had just maintained an open heart for 1 week longer, or 2 months longer, or 1 year longer, even though you might not be in as intimate of a physical relationship as you had been, you will be in an open, loving relationship with that person, because your heart remains open to them and allowing them to express themselves fully. And that's all anybody really wants, is to be able to express themselves fully. And an open heart allows that in all aspects of experience for anyone. So I think, right now I'll leave it at that. If anyone has any questions, definitely feel free to ask. But I would like to, encourage people to be open in relationships, be open to nature, be open to animals, even if your expectations aren't being fulfilled. First, go to nature and see what that feels like, to love nature without controlling it, because we can't control nature. We can't control other humans either, but we have the illusion that we can. But there's no, we cannot control nature no matter what, even if we try. So surrender yourself to nature first and see how that feels, and experience the beauty that nature has to give you when you cannot control it. And then transfer that to other humans. Transfer that feeling to humans, and maintain an open heart, even if you can't control, and even if you aren't being fulfilled with the expectations that your ego is telling you that you deserve, or that you need to have. Surrender those expectations and maintain an open heart despite what is going on around you, and you will find that it's a beautiful feeling. And I will leave it at that. Much love to everyone out there, and much, much, much gratitude to all of you. Enjoy this beautiful day wherever you are, with an open and beautiful heart.